you have this really, really sick character design, but it's also really hard to understand. Or your character wears a bunch of different outfits. And boy, do I have a solution for you. The layered reference sheet. Normally, folks think of reference sheets as one image with a bunch of different views of their characters or extra details, and these are great for most applications. Don't get me wrong, but what if your design evolves? What if your character has different outfits? What if you like smashing doll pieces together? And that is where the layered doll style reference sheet comes in. So, if you'd like to learn how I make layered reference sheets for my favorite original characters, grab your current creative project and listen along. We'll also talk about scenarios in which I would not recommend making one, because sometimes they are just overkill. If you want to avoid making a bunch of work for yourself when you don't need it, make sure you stick around to the end. Or I guess you could just skip ahead if you want, I guess. Anyway, I'm going to use the terms layered reference sheet and doll style pretty interchangeably, so know that I mean the same thing during this video, alright? Okay, now, let's go. Let's talk about why you should make a doll style reference sheet. For one, if you like making lots of outfits for your OC, or maybe you have a tabletop character and you love updating your gear as they acquire it, then a doll style reference is for you. What this type of reference is one with a bunch of layers and folders. It's the digital equivalent to a paper dress-up doll. You start with a base drawing of the character's body, and how modular you want it to be comes down to how much work you're willing to do drawing. A doll style reference is great for illustrating different looks for a character without having to draw them fresh every time. For example, if you play your character in a tabletop role-playing game, you might want to update their look for a masquerade ball, or after a major character arc. Or if your character has a complicated outfit, you can build up each layer and easily show off how different parts stack on top of each other. Having a doll reference means you only have to draw new outfit pieces, rather than redoing your character's expression and base coloring and everything. And with Art Fight over, now is a great time to work on more elaborate references. Also, one more heads up, because we're talking about references, there will be artistic nudity. It's nothing you wouldn't see at the mall or at the beach or at an art museum. Honestly, less than what you'd see at an art museum, quite frankly. Alright, we're now here at my drawing tablet. I'm going to sound a little differently because my mic is somewhere else, but let's do a little setup walkthrough. So, I'm going to show off some of my doll style models so you can see how I do it. I personally tend to go for a happy medium between ease of drawing and level of separation because I am a layer hater. If I don't need a new layer, I don't tend to make it, but you can do whatever you want. Okay, so here we have my character Inigo. I'm sure those of you who have seen my art before, you know this lovely character. This is his layered reference sheet file, and you can see here that I have a bunch of folders set up where I have his hair on his own layer, which, yeah, this means you can actually see his hairline, which is important if someone ever draws him at a weird angle where his bangs might be leaning upwards, or if he decides to cut his hair for some reason. I also have his armor on its own layer and all that. We'll get around to this. Let's walk through this. I usually start out with a base layer like this. It's just a character with no clothes on. It just has all their nice details, and this is great because it gives you perfect reference for things like scars and body hair and their general build, because a character's build will affect how clothing falls on them, you know? All very useful stuff. I also have some props that go behind the character as separate layers, just because layering wise, it works out better to have these behind the character. Then we start to get into the different clothing aspects. I actually put his boots on a separate layer because they are shared between a couple outfit variants. I separated this a little bit weirdly in that I did my punk fit entirely kind of as one thing. For whatever reason, this says jacket, but actually the whole entire clothes are like this. Don't do this like I did. I built this in a very silly way initially. And later on, when he got some battle damage and needed to get his jacket repaired, I put the patches on their own layer. That way, it's super easy to just put stuff right on top. But then these are sort of his normal clothes, but then he also has his work uniform. I'm working on an update to this design because he works at the Excalibur acting as a knight in the Tournament of Kings, so he should have proper full plate, but I haven't designed it fully yet. That's in progress. I'm working on that. But this is basically the underclothes to his outfit. And what is very cool about it is I have drawn it so that his stuff stacks nicely, including his armor, which I have a couple variants of the different pieces. And that's also another trick you can do, is just use layer masks to hide the bits that overlap weirdly. I'm sure if you were feeling really ambitious, you could separate out the layers way more fully, but I personally like having it grouped by outfit, at least for Inigo. But if you want it to really work flawlessly, you don't have to do that. I also want to show off how this builds into his larger reference sheet, which is the sheet that you see posted on places like Toy House and Art Fight. So basically, having this one layered file means I can make all these other lovely little variants that you see on his other reference. I say, pointing to this when it's a separate drawing. It's the exact same art as over here, but I didn't have to do nearly as much redrawing. Also, by designing the patches separately and placing them on here, it makes it super easy to build this reference sheet. Everything else is just art I made as separate callouts and didn't put a whole lot of polish into. You know, if you look at the lines for this is just a sketch, actually. It's a really, really clean sketch, but for the most part, it's not actually that much special. But overall, my point is if you want to make something like this overkill reference sheet actually manageable to do, you start with something simple, like this. And that way, you can just export what you need from it. Separating all these different aspects means it's easy to mix and match outfits. Or if your character has small design updates like being gifted props or acquiring battle damage, it's easier to update than a reference sheet that isn't separated. Okay, I just told you all about why you should make a layered doll ref, but this is a lot of work, and not all characters require it. So let's talk scenarios where I wouldn't recommend making a reference like this. So, scenario 1, you don't plan to update the character's design. If you don't need to do this much work, don't. Please, seriously, this is overkill for characters who have a static design. Scenario 2. Your character is simple with no variants. If your character design doesn't have a lot of layers or niche details, such as them being designed for an animated project, then you don't need a layered ref, probably. You really don't. And, of course, there is scenario 3. You don't want to. Simple fact. If you don't want to draw a bunch of separated layers, then just don't. There's a reason why I bought a pre-made customizable VTuber model instead of making my own. My point is, this is just one way you can make a reference, and you should assess the kind of reference sheet you need based on what you're doing with your character. And that's a layered doll style reference sheet. I hope this way of making reference sheets presents a cool new option for you to explore. And if you have anything specific you like to include on your reference sheets that is like really niche, tell me about it in the comments. Let's accumulate wisdom together as a community. And if you want to hear more about my art journey and have some cozy background noise while you do something creative, make sure to hit like and subscribe, as that tells the algorithm that this video does not suck. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Be cozy, be kind, and make something cool.